Hey guys, we're going to do a quick tutorial on converting raw data into TIFF files in a batch fashion. So we have a few examples here, and hopefully it will save you time if you have a big folder full of images. And there are two different threads here. One is for converting things into data TIFFs, if you want to process them in MATLAB or something like that, where you have a very quick read speed on them. Or the other option, if you want to create an image, a picture TIFF for figures and presentations and things like that. And so they're two very distinct threads, and so there's some overlap in this tutorial with some others, and let's have a look just to show you. We have a 16 to 8-bit conversion, is potentially some interest in there. Definitely the create simple macro, we're going to use the macro from there. And then data versus a picture, we'll explain if you're not sure about 8-bit, 16-bit picture and data TIFFs and how to go between them properly. So that's of interest if you want to have a look at those. So firstly, we're going to open up one of the raw files and have a look, but before we do anything in Fiji, open up the developer button and hit record. We have this little recorder window. You can keep track of what's happened. It's like your log, and you can create macros, and it's very useful. Let's drag and drop our data on there, opens up bioformats, and we get the errors for the metadata not playing nice, and the colors don't come in so well with some of the certain raw data types. We can see the data's there, but it's just all red. It's just false color for those particular wavelengths that we've recorded. It should be blue, green, red in this one. And so just to show you the macro we created, so I'm going to bring that in and have a look. We can use this macro to set the channels and set them as blue, green, red, and make an overlay. And we'll come back to that one in a moment. And so the obvious option for converting files is process, batch, and then convert. But this is really only good if you want to create a data TIFF from raw data. You can use it to batch convert between different types of pictures really readily. It's very useful. But if you've got a raw data type, the output you're going to get really only plays nice when you're going for a raw data type too. So if you want to run something in a MATLAB, this is the best option. If you use that, you can put in the input and the output folders. We use a output folder here just to keep things tidy. And if we go to the TIFF and run with no interpolation, and we won't scale, and we're not going to play with averaging here, so we're just going to ignore these three because they're to do with upscaling, downscaling, and we have to click the read with bioformat. So we click convert, get some metadata errors, and we don't worry about those, and it's trying to convert the macro file. We just ignore that too. So we'll go to the output folder, and we see that we have these black thumbnails, which is Windows trying to read a thumbnail from a data format which is not what it's expecting. And so the data itself is in there. It's a 16-bit data file. It looks nearly identical to the raw file with less metadata really. So that's the short story of the convert option. If you run it with the other options here, you end up with just a picture of the dark thumbnail or just a single channel, and you can't change the colors from what it is on the inputs. There's really not much use beyond converting pictures to pictures or data to data. So we're going to leave that one alone. The best option is to do a batch and use the macro option here. And you again input and output. We're going to use the TIFF output, but we're going to change the file format in here before it goes on and before it's outputted, so it will just save it as whatever type it is. So we're going to change it to a picture before we save it, and it will save a TIFF picture. It's also got the option to search out and pick out just certain ones. So if we put in just XY here, we can deal with just the 2D ones. Let's get rid of those old ones we didn't like. And so if you look at this batch I've created, it's going to set the channel, change it to blue, channel 2 green, and channel 3 red, and we're going to make an overlay with a composite. We have this one here for the Z project. I'm just going to put 2 slashes in there and just blank that one out. We're not going to worry about Z's for the moment. It's going to turn the picture into a color picture. So it's going to turn it from a data to a picture by changing it to RGB. And then at the end, it's going to save an output. We don't have to tell it to save; it automatically saves. So sometimes when you're trying to run a macro here, a batch macro, it will run all the things and then save something at the end that you don't even want. And so this kind of a default is that it saves at the end. So we set that like that, and we go ahead and process. And then we're going to have a look, see what we have, and it's processed just the 2 XY images, and it's changed the colors, made the overlay, and saved it as a picture. And so when we drag that back on the Fiji, we can see it's just an RGB image, no channels, just a picture. And so that's the short story there. And in the next one, I'm going to follow up and talk about the Z-Stack options, because things can get a little bit more complicated of trying to do it in a batch fashion.